Welcome to a special video that's tied with PokeDoku, the daily puzzle game where you could fill out a grid of Pokemon, but you gotta follow some certain criteria, and you can't use the same Pokemon more than once. Like here's today's puzzle, submitted by yours truly. Now, if you need any help filling this puzzle out, stick around as this video would cover some relevant Pokemon that can solve this puzzle. But yeah, while I usually talk about my own STEM-based creature collection on this channel, I always try to keep the STEM-based spirit through my discussions and designs. And I think they'll come in quite handily in this video, as we ask, what new Convergent Pokemon do we expect to see in Pokemon Legends ZA? So here's the thing. Pokemon recognizes there are fans who might not like the totally new designs as much as their old favorites like Voltorb and Rattata, and even though those old Pokemon are still in the game, their inclusion feels more like a given rather than a special feature, as they're usually littered across the new region from the get-go. So Pokemon decided to make new designs that reference older Pokemon. And I'm not just talking about new evolutions, because that's been done ever since the second generation to tie the regions together. But nah, I'm talking about stuff like Generation 6's Mega Evolutions, which we expect to see returning in Legends ZA, as they take an old design and gave them a new, stronger look. Generation 7 then made regional forms of Kanto Pokemon, where the Pokemon you knew now have different typings due to adapting to a new location. Then Generation 8 took this a step further, where there are new regional forms, but some of them would branch off into new evolutions entirely. And now with the most recent generation, we saw the addition of 3 new lines of lookalike Pokemon, a category that hasn't been officially named yet. Now, this isn't to be confused with this generation's Paradox Pokemon, which reference older designs as well, just with a Dino or Robo theme attached to them. But those set of designs seem to be custom to this region's story, unlike how we saw new regionals outside of Gen 7's Alola. And yes, Generation 9 still had new regional forms and even a regional evolution. But these lookalike Pokemon are supposed to be completely unrelated species who just happen to look like some past lines we're familiar with. Now, many fans call these Pokemon Convergent Pokemon, and I've explained Divergent and Convergent evolution several times before, so I'll try to keep this brief. So these are some terms from our real lives. In the case of Divergent evolution, the different species have a shared ancestor, but they became different over time due to some selection factor, like some of them living in a different environment. Diverging is going in different directions. This would be able to describe most regional forms in Pokemon, where you can tell that these Pokemon have shared an ancestor, but the species diverge from each other due to living and adapting to different environments. On the other hand, when different species who do not share an ancestor with a particular trait somehow find themselves in similar conditions, they might evolve to have similar shapes and/or features to better suit that similar environment. Converging is coming together. So wait, isn't everyone technically related to each other if we go back far enough? So the main deal with Convergent evolution is that the species are unrelated to each other enough that the similar traits aren't because of a shared ancestor. I'll be calling these lookalike Pokemon Convergent Pokemon for the rest of the video, because the explanation behind these Pokemon looking like previous lines is reportedly because they have similar ecological niches. But yeah, the main gist about regionals versus Convergent Pokemon is that the former is often caused due to adapting to a new area and diverging from their original ancestors, while the latter is caused due to different species independently finding similar shapes and/or features to achieve similar goals. Dugtrio here has been through the ringer for both of these variations. Gen 7's Alolan Dugtrio are still moles, just now with fabulous volcanic glass hair, while Generation 9's Wugtrio aren't moles at all. They're garden eels that just happen to look like Dugtrio because they both burrow in the ground and the sand. Now, regionals and even these Convergent Pokemon aren't perfect examples of Divergent and Convergent evolution, but they are a fun way to use Pokemon to describe those phenomena. There are other kinds of evolution, by the way, but I could go over those in a different video. Anyways, what does this mean for the actual designs? While regionals still usually reference the same species, like a fox turns into a fox, and an ox becomes an ox, Convergent Pokemon would purposely try to have a very different kind of species. And given the track record of Generation 8's regional evolutions being included amongst the new Pokemon of Legends Arceus, I'd expect to see a few Gen 9's Convergent Pokemon trope to continue in the upcoming Pokemon Legends ZA. Pokemon Legends ZA is set in the French-inspired Kalos region, and judging how several Hisuian Pokemon in Legends Arceus were themed around Japan's past, I'd expect these new conversions to have a French theme. I actually shared one a few months ago with Mimawudo being the Ghost Bug convergent of the Monorock type Pseudo-Wudo, where it turned the petrified wood into a stick bug, which are also called Phasmids, hence the ghost typing. Mimawudo was also supposed to reference French mimes, as the species would try to stay quiet when mimicking a tree. I go more in depth about this design in a previous video, and even show a Bonsda counterpart. But let's finally get into some of the new designs I made for this video, and try to fill up our PokeDoku board here. So Convergent Pokemon have expanded outside of just living species. So in a similar vein, I think I could take some creative liberties as I tried to make a cheese fake mod, as there are several iconic French cheeses. But which Pokemon should I reference? Instead of just looking at shapes, I was looking at the concepts. So what is cheese? Fermented milk. And I looked into fermentation, which is a process cells take when they try to make energy in an oxygen-less environment. And when we make certain bacteria or yeast ferment, the yielding products turn out to be edible, barring any allergies or health conditions. But this is how we make cheese, yogurt, sauerkraut, and alcohol. Now, is there a Pokemon that's based off of fermented food? Apparently Shuckle is, as he represents snake wine, where whole snakes are dunked and fermented in alcohol. Now we can continue with our design. As I look back at the list of French cheeses, and chose a Camembert which has a tough exterior, but has a moist and gooey core. So here's Shirtle, a cheese wheel with a gooey inside. I based the design on a baked Camembert, where the crust is cut open so you can see the cheese goo inside. But yeah, I was thinking of calling this a normal fairy type because Milk Drink the move is normal, while Milcery the cream Pokemon is a fairy. I also imagined the ooze could be retractable, so that the Shirtle could roll down a hill or something. Dang, we still got one more slot to finish out our PokeDoku grid. Why not take this opportunity to make one last design today? Okay, I thought making one more fake mon for the video was going to be easy, but I won't lie, this last design was brutal. See, Convergent Pokemon aren't the easiest variants for me, because there's only 3 official lines to go off of. And on top of that, I have to find a concept for French culture, so I can't just look at random Pokemon without a concept in mind. I mean, I tried, but yeah, it's hard. So I surfed the internet more, and stumbled across masquerade balls, which were both popular in French and Italian history. In fact, clothing and fashion itself is a major deal in culture. I then looked for Pokemon with masks, but the ideas just weren't clicking. My brain was fried, but my hands were cooking. For you see, among the masked Pokemon I've seen, there was Castform from Generation 3, who has other forms that change designs and types in the weather, as they go from a mono normal type to fire, water, and ice. They don't have a sandstorm form. So my immediate thought for a Convergent Castform was to have a terrain version of this mechanic. No, not just mimicry. I want new designs. For these are masked terrains. Masquerains! My brain is long gone by now. Alright, so what species should this cloud turn into? Well, if they're on the ground, why not make them escargot? As they are well-known French dishes with snails. And how would the designs change for the different terrains? I actually ended up ditching the masquerade concept and leaned more into general fashion, as I decided to make the shell change into different chapeaus. The base normal ground form took the most time because I couldn't find a default hat, so I actually went with no hat with the shell referencing a French bob haircut. Then the grass terrain makes a green beret. The electric terrain makes a yellow bicorn. And the psychic terrain makes a Frisian hat. I remember that the latest Barrio Olympics had a red Frisian cap as their mascot to represent freedom and revolution, so I tried to reference that through the shiny at the very least. And lastly, well, Hold on there. Castform only has 3 weather forms despite the fact that Sandstorm exists. And if fans are happy with Castform only representing those weathers because they're supposed to be a cloud or something, wouldn't they be happy with just 3 terrain forms? Okay, I'm just kidding. I made the Misty terrain one based off of the bell-shaped close shaft. Oh, and by the way, I also made a Sandstorm Castform back in the day. You know, the crazy thing about Convergent Pokemon is that if we are referencing Convergent evolution from our world, these new species should usually share a type with the Pokemon they're referencing, because the type often reflects the Pokemon's habitat. I mean, what is really stopping Wiglet from being a water-ground type? They're underground most of the time. We did end up getting a Convergent line that shares a type with the line that they're referencing, but I don't know. I'm just saying that even though some fans are really adamant about how the types are supposed to be strong or weak against each other, we've only seen 3 lines, and I really wouldn't be surprised if we see a type combo that doesn't follow that pattern, because there's really no need for them to be strong against each other. This is all to say that I wish to see more official Convergent or lookalike Pokemon in the future. It's a fun new twist, and I hope you enjoyed some of today's designs. I frankly expect a few new Convergent Pokemon in Legends EA, but I'll probably think about making more designs once we hear more about the game. Speaking of games, don't forget to check out PokeDoku. I just showed off my answers for this day's puzzle, but can you fill it out? And even when you're watching this on a different day, there's a new puzzle every day, so go check them out. If you like discussions and designs like today's, I have a whole video series here where I'm going over my independent creature collector that's based off of STEM topics. I want to give a special thank you to my Patreon supporters for their direct support, but you could always support me by liking and following the channel. But yeah, thank you for watching this video, and I hope you'll have a nice one.